Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So today's video, why do I drive a Prius? So the Prius is not a very feature-rich car. Most people know this who own one, but we own it not because it is feature-rich or fun to drive or exhilarating to drive. We drive it because of cost savings more often than not. So in this video, I'm going to dive into how much you can save by driving a Prius, what it looks like compared to competing vehicles, and exactly why I still drive a 10-year-old car. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. All right, so as most of you know, I drive a 2010 Prius. I also have a second 2010 and the 2004 that just underwent the hybrid battery reconditioning process. Now, I do gravitate towards these cars. I do not find them fun to drive, but they are extremely satisfying to own. Now, most cars, if you're not a car enthusiast, you may think of them as a vehicle for getting from point A to point B. Now, this is true, but your experience in driving the vehicle does matter. So with these Priuses, I have found that they are satisfying to own. Now, why? A lot of the times, people may think of a Prius as a car that is super slow, not necessarily comfortable, small, and yes, it does save money, but how much? Is it worth it? So in this video, I'm going to go through in a spreadsheet that I made that converts between, the Prius, some of its competitors, and even a Tesla Model 3, so we can get an idea of what it looks like and how much money you can save by owning a Prius. So let me dive into the spreadsheet and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so what you're looking at here is the spreadsheet I put together that covers fuel efficiency, cost savings, as well as insurance costs and depreciation, and they'll all be compared with the Prius. And the idea here is to get an idea of the costs, how much you could save or expect to spend when you own a Prius compared to a different vehicle. So starting on the fuel efficiency tab here, I want to go over some math that I did to calculate the costs for fuel for a Prius in a given year. So for the 2010 Prius, and honestly up to 2016, or if you want to go all the way up to 2020, the fuel efficiency number of 48.5 is a conservative estimate of what we could expect in terms of efficiency from a Prius. Now, the number below is actually comparing a non-Prius, so the average sedan in the United States. So I have a graph here. This came from the Federal Highway Administration and the highway statistics from 2016. It does have a car, is how it has it listed. It's basically a sedan at just below 25 miles per gallon, but given the 4-year-old data collection there, I gave it a little bit of a bump to 25.1. Again, to try and be as conservative as possible, stack the odds a little bit against the Prius, so that way we can be sure that what we've captured here is accurate. And so assuming we drive 13.5 thousand miles a year, that is the United States average, and the average gas price in the United States, also used for EPA estimates as $2.11, we can expect to spend a little over, or almost $600 on fuel for a given year. And the average sedan, getting 25.1 miles per gallon, would burn $1,134 of fuel, meaning the Prius would save you $500 a year. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, that's a lot of money. Well, extrapolate that out through, a given month, and it's not that much. But I also built out a second model. So this is for if you drive 20,000 miles a year, and some people do drive more distance as maybe for their job, and they'd like to save even more money. And you can see here, if you drive 20,000 miles a year, which I am in that group, I would save $811 a year over a car that gets 25 miles per gallon. And this is fuel alone. And I wanted to make sure I did this math because this is right here the reason why I ended up buying the car. Now, I've noticed the other savings, including insurance costs and depreciation, which we'll go over here in a minute, but this is the biggest reason why people own a Prius. Now, I also wanted to compare this to an electric car because a lot of people have this idea that the Model 3, which I believe is the most efficient electric vehicle on the market, will save you a ton of money over a Prius, and that's just simply not true. So if we scroll down, I do have, let's go through here, the Prius versus the Tesla Model 3, and I did, again, be conservative with the Prius. So 48.5 miles per gallon is the average. In my car, I do average over 50, but not everyone does, so I made it a little bit lower. Again, 13.5 thousand miles a year, $2.11 for gas, And my electricity cost in Kansas is actually a little bit lower than the national average. So I'm at 16 cents per kilowatt hour, which is, again, low. And the Tesla Model 3 gets 239 watt hours per mile. Again, you have to do a conversion here if you're speaking in terms of kilowatts for the price. So I did 0.239. That's essentially the number of kilowatts per mile. Again, doing some math, you can see here that the costs for fuel for the Prius stay the same at $5.87. And for the Tesla, assuming you're paying for all your charging, which may not be true, but assuming you're paying for all of it, you're charging in at night, you would spend $71 less in fuel costs over the Prius. So in other words, yes, you save money with a Model 3, but that is negligible at best. Now, if you do drive 20,000 miles, you'll see a little bit more savings, $104.55, but this is not a ton of money at all. And you'll see when we get to the depreciation tab that that is going to be wiped away. So that's just a comparison between the average sedan and the Tesla Model 3. And I do have a note here showing that according to Inside EVs, the Tesla Model 3 is the most efficient electric car ever, according to officially released EPA ratings. So not a small foe to compete against. Now, insurance costs are going to be a little bit easier. And again, this is going to be tough for me to, relate to all of you. So at least for me, my premiums on my 2010s is about $700 a year, and I do have a $1,000 deductible for collision and a $500 for comprehensive. So it just depends on what your policy premiums are. Again, if you have tickets, your driving record, all of that can be modified. But at least for me, when I was comparing my 2010 Prius versus a Tesla Model 3 2018, this was the premium difference per year. So it's not quite 50% higher. It's not quite double, but you can see there is a difference there, and that will easily wipe away any savings you see from fuel. Again, if you live in Kansas with 16 cents per kilowatt hour. Now again, so depreciation, and this is kind of the big one and the one that has the most data, and I find this the most cool. The depreciation curves for cars are different depending on the model, the manufacturer, and the region for which you live. Now, you can see here, and I used a really cool website, which I'll link in the description, called caredge.com. You can see depreciation curves for not only specific brands, but models, and also compare them to regions and the industry standard. So it's really cool to see this. But for my Prius, in 2010, I did outline it here. After 10 years have passed, so today's 2020, we're in 2020, it's right at about 30% value retention. And this is about true. My car is worth about $7,000, I could guess. And brand new is worth about $23,000. That checks out. Now, if I go down to a Tesla Model 3, and again, these are estimates because the Tesla Model 3 did not exist 10 years ago, but where it's trended so far, and you can see the what we call the room for error, it kind of grows over time. But you can see, given the first couple of years, it's pretty right on with the Prius and where it was before. Maybe a little bit lower, less depreciation, more linear than that sharp curve. But as you get to year 10, they estimate that it'll be a little bit above 30%. So not a ton of savings for depreciation on a Model 3. Not typically what I read, but after hours of research, this is what I found. And if you compare the Prius to the Tesla Model S, so not the 3, the Model S, because we do have data on the Model S, given it's been around since 2012, you can see it does outperform the Prius, but again, by a very narrow margin. And I do have the key down below. The orange is the Model S, the blue is the Prius, and the gray is the industry average. So you can see the depreciation curve for both cars does follow the industry average. Some difference here on around the 2-3 year mark. But you can see the Tesla Model S does outperform the Prius, but again, by a very narrow margin, and I would expect that to continue with the Model 3. So you don't save a whole lot between the Prius, the Tesla Model S, or the Model 3. You don't save a whole lot of money by buying an electric car over the Prius with depreciation. And the Prius does seem to stand with all other cars in the depreciation curve for the industry standard. So this is kind of in essence why I own a Prius. It seems to be an extremely reliable car. I can save thousands of dollars over the course of several years and eventually get the car that I really want to drive. But it is freeing also to drive a car that is going to save you money. And when you go to the gas pump and it costs $20 instead of that $40, which a SUV or truck may, it does add up over time, and it is freeing to be a little bit more financially responsible and financially free. So that's just my quick little tidbit and what I was able to find just from a little bit of research, and just wanted to share it with all of you. If you do have questions, go ahead and leave those into the comments. I'm happy to address those. I'd love to hear what kind of Prius you drive and also what kind of savings you've seen in your car and what it's enabled you to do. I know there are a lot of people who drive a Prius and they say, well, why do you drive it? And they say, well, I get to go on vacations and they can drive in them. Some people even camp in them. So it's pretty cool. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, go ahead and subscribe. If you do have any ideas or things you'd like to see, go ahead and leave those in the comments. I do take them seriously, and you never know. It could be a future video. Thank you all, and I'll see you in the next one.